The United States' war against Venezuela is only gaining momentum, and today Donald Trump announced that the United States of America is imposing a full naval blockade on Venezuela. According to Trump, Venezuela is completely surrounded by American troops on all its shores, and from now on, all sanctioned oil tankers connected to Venezuela will be seized or sunk. While everyone is analyzing this loud part of the statement, Donald Trump has finally admitted the real reason for the entire war against Venezuela, and personally against the regime of Nicolas Maduro. Donald Trump accused Venezuela of stealing funds from the United States of America, claiming that the Maduro regime is stealing oil, other minerals, and even land from the United States. That is why the United States has officially declared the Maduro government a foreign terrorist organization, which allows the United States military to attack anything and everything connected to the Maduro regime. In turn, the Venezuelan government stated that no, it is actually Donald Trump who is trying to steal the wealth that belongs to Venezuela. But you all might have a logical question. How exactly is Venezuela stealing money, oil, minerals, and even land from the United States of America? What did Trump accuse the Maduro regime of? That's the difficult question we will answer in this episode. My name is Alexei Pecci. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and leave any comment under this episode. This really helps a lot in promoting the video on YouTube. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel Pecci News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. So while we were sleeping in our hemisphere, United States President Donald Trump announced that he is putting neighboring Venezuela under siege and declared the Maduro regime there as terrorist. Well, let me give you the full quote from Donald Trump and then we'll analyze it. So Donald Trump writes on his social network Truth Social. Donald writes on social media that he is putting neighboring Venezuela under siege and has declared Maduro there a terrorist. Donald Trump writes that he is putting Venezuela under siege and has declared the local government terrorist. Donald writes on his social network Truth Social that he is putting neighboring Venezuela under siege and has declared the local government terrorist. Illegal migrants and criminals that the Maduro regime sent to the United States during the weak and incompetent Biden administration are returning to Venezuela. This is quite a loud statement which, as you can hear, is full of claims that Venezuela has stolen something from Americans. We'll discuss that later, it's an interesting point. The measures taken against Venezuela, which has one of the largest oil reserves in the world, led to an increase in oil prices by about $1 up to $56 per barrel. After Donald Trump's statement, that's still low compared to the figure a year ago. This happened after the United States seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela earlier this month. The United States is building up military forces in the Caribbean, aiming to pressure Maduro to step down from leading the South American country. In recent weeks, Trump has threatened a more serious confrontation with Venezuela. And earlier this month, he said in an interview that Maduro's days are numbered and did not rule out the possibility of sending American troops into Venezuela. The increased pressure on this country has alienated some political allies within the United States who oppose the apparent attempt at regime change in Venezuela. Well, for example, some Republican senators like Josh Hawley openly state that the real reason for the war against Venezuela is precisely the overthrow of Maduro's regime and not some fight against drugs. But it's important to remember that any ground operation in Venezuela must be approved by Congress, since it would be considered a war. That's why Trump chooses methods like blockade and siege, just to make Maduro's regime's survival impossible, although it will take more time. Earlier this year, the Trump administration launched a series of targeted military strikes on ships in international waters of the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans near South and Central America. As a result, about 100 people suspected of drug smuggling have already been killed. And here we are today. White House Chief of Staff Suzy Wiles stated directly that all these strikes are part of a broader campaign to pressure Maduro, as Trump seeks to overthrow the Venezuelan leader. And by the way, there will be another episode on this YouTube channel today about the high-profile interview with White House Chief of Staff Suzy Wiles, who said a lot of interesting things that reveal the true nature of Donald Trump. Let's return to Venezuela. I want to make an important remark immediately. Despite Trump's statement, about 2/3 of Venezuela's oil exports will still be transported without any obstacles, because they are shipped by tankers that have not yet been sanctioned. Venezuela exports about 900,000 barrels per day in total, while the sanctioned tankers account for about 300,000 barrels. That's not enough to change the situation on the global oil market. But don't be fooled by these numbers, because it might seem like, well, just hang in there. Venezuela is losing only 1/3 of its oil supplies, but that's not the case. And here I'll quote one of the former United States State Department employees, David Goldwyn. Quote, "Although the blockade is unlikely to affect gasoline prices at United States gas stations, it will have an impact on Maduro. The loss of revenue for Venezuela could amount to up to 80% of government income. This loss of revenue will lead to a deficit affecting transportation, food, logistics, agriculture, and the import of goods. I expect a sharp rise in inflation and a massive and immediate migration from Venezuela to neighboring countries. But it's important to remember here that this will also affect Venezuela's allies, who may not want a conflict with the United States of America because of the Maduro regime. The fact is that in recent years, Venezuela's global oil exports have grown mainly due to a network of brokers and shadow tankers to China, the country's largest buyer. So now China will have to make a choice. But judging by the fact that Russia, for example, can't help Maduro in any way, and Putin apparently doesn't even want to, Beijing isn't in a hurry to get involved in this story either. Interestingly, Chevron is the only American oil company that still operates in Venezuela under a license extended by the Donald Trump administration. This year, it stated that its operations have not been affected, and it continues to work calmly as before. And now we've come to the most interesting part. So, what exactly has Venezuela, as Donald Trump put it, stolen and continues to steal from the United States of America? In his statement, Donald Trump said that Venezuela stole oil, land, and other assets from the United States government. But is that really true? It's a complex question that needs examination. Most likely, Donald Trump is referring to lawsuits, and here I'll explain what this is about. It's complicated, but we'll solve it now. Last year, a United States federal court approved lawsuits totaling almost $21 billion from a number of companies that sued Venezuela, the government of that country, a year ago. A number of American, Canadian, and Irish companies that had previously worked in some way in Venezuela's oil market or invested their money in this sector went to court. The thing is, when Nicolas Maduro regained power, many Western companies that were actively involved in oil and other mineral extraction in this country were expelled from Venezuela. And all the creditors who invested in the Venezuelan mining industry were left without their money. Because Nicolas Maduro simply refused to pay the debts, he said, "Everything we owe, we forgive everyone." As a result, the total claim amounted to $21 billion, and that's after the court reduced it because the original was $3.5 billion more. In January 2021, a number of Western companies demanded through the court to get their assets back by selling the factories of Citgo Petroleum, which belongs to the government of Venezuela. The entire company has its roots in Houston, United States of America, but it actively operated in Venezuela, and as a result, some of the oil refineries remained there under the control of Nicolas's regime. So the sale of this company, Citgo Petroleum, to compensate creditors met with fierce resistance from the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, who called the actions of the American court theft. Although the creditors simply want to get back their assets that were stolen from them by Maduro, a solution was proposed: to sell the assets of Citgo Petroleum in Venezuela, auction off these oil refineries, sell the oil refineries, and pay off the debts. Well, $21 billion is no joke, but Maduro said no, we won't sell anything. This is theft and pure audacity, plus the government has changed. Sorry, I don't know where or how you invested. And it should be noted that Trump indirectly mentioned these claims in his statement, in which he referred to, quote, the illegal regime. Maduro uses oil from these stolen oil fields to finance herself, narco-terrorism, human trafficking, murders, and kidnappings. That is, Trump is hinting that those very assets of Western companies that remained in Venezuela and are now being discussed and litigated in American courts. This is exactly what Maduro stole and continues to profit from. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if the amount of the lawsuit increases in the future, because Maduro really does continue to use these assets and profit from them, which is basically how he survives. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like, friends. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation or a paid sponsorship subscription using the links and details provided. In the description of this video, it says support the Alexei Peachy channel. Choose any format that's convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.